being lost, and if you're losing your mind, is expressed with the same characteristic. And if you see the girl, then you lose your mind. And it sounds a similar way as Mini.
Uh-huh.
Also. I see Martin already the idea was working.
Yeah. Okay. Get it going. So there we're going to conclude the book of Genesis with, right, this Shabbat will be Chazak. Also, Daniel told me he's coming for Shabbat, so that's great. And we are at the verge of finishing. We actually finished the story last week of the great union between Joseph and his brothers, but this week it still continues with the brothers are thinking to themselves of whether or not Joseph's nice behavior is only a result of their father. And once the father passes away, they start having fears of retribution, of Joseph revenging. And soon we'll see how this isn't true, and how Joseph had managed to attain a level of forgiveness that wasn't before, and how this remedies the whole book of Genesis. So you know the joke we always sometimes tell it about this. The rabbi was standing in Yom Kippur, and he was talking about how people have to forgive each other, and he's trying to ask people whether or not they have enemies or they have haters. So he's asking, is there anyone in the audience that has no haters, that has no one that does not like them? So an old lady picks up her hand. You know the joke, right? The old lady picks up her hand, and he's spotting her because he's standing in the center of the synagogue, and he's saying, oh, look at this. She's this wonderful old lady for our community. She has no enemies. She learned how to forgive all her years. She was practicing forgiveness. So, she liked the lecture, but she didn't want to disturb. But she told the rabbi, no, the reason I have no enemies is because they're all dead. Because I outlived everyone. It's not because of that. But really, one of the most important things that person have in their lives is forgiveness. It's quite easy to get hurt. Yes.
I did do my homework today.
Oh, finally!
And
Cheat sheet.
According to the Chabad website, with the parsha is Ketzel or something like. Anyway, the bird, black, beautiful bird.
Okay.
But the parsha,
yeah,
indicated on your first slide was last week, I think.
Vayechi, no, isn't it Vayechi?
So I was just curious at how I got on the wrong week.
Where is it? Why doesn't it start? Vayechi is the week this week. Vayechi, yeah. What did you?
That's correct for today.
That's for this week, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
What topics did you read about in your weekly portion sheet?
Yeah, the beautiful birds. They have a contest about which is the more beautiful.
The beautiful bird?
And the bird's name is not Quetzal, but it sounds a little bit like that.
The beautiful bird? I'm trying to think. Reuben, beautiful bird? Reuben.
Beautiful bird? Sure, there is such concept?
The bird that it is eating from the basket on the head, is that Miketz? Is that what you're referring to? The bird that was eating.
But those are not particularly beautiful, so they are particularly ugly.
Was it something with the dreams? Was it the dreams, Marty?
I did have it here, but
they are birds that offer death? No, I don't like those birds.
Yeah. Okay, you'll find it. Tell me what it is. We'll see if we relate to it. Okay, so the questions we have about Joseph, and it's really a question directed to ourselves, is about forgiveness. We find Joseph that he encounters his brothers after 22 years, and he remembered. He takes with him the story wherever he goes. Just a second. You want me to turn on your
He
connection?
did.
You
No,
like
no,
it?
that's fine. Really.
Yeah, you don't need whatever. Tell me if you're hot, you can turn it on.
No, fine.
Okay. You found something, Marty? You found something? Not yet. Okay, no worries. You'll find it later. So Joseph was someone of special. He was special, we know. But what was so special about him in our context that he managed to forgive his brothers. And we have several questions we want to answer in this class. How could he look in the eyes of Shimon and Levi, those who tied him and tossed him into a pit full of scorpions and snakes? How could he come to terms with them? How could he sit side by side with Judah, the one who recommended, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, right? Judah was the one who came up with the idea that...
One possible answer is they really have repented and he believes they have really changed, so they are not the ones who did those evil things.
That's an interesting direction.
Answer. And not contradictory answer. They are family, no matter if there are many defects.
I hear you. It's interesting, these two directions. I will take a slightly different approach, but it's surely interesting. Either they have changed, or it doesn't matter whether they're changed or not, they're still his brothers. So not only does he's not upset with them, he repays them well, sustaining them for many years. They are all dependent on him, and instead of him, Joseph, taking advantage of the situation, just like Rashi says on the spot, Vayaker Yosef et Echav ve'hem lo yikiru. Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. So we have the simple meaning of the scriptures. They didn't recognize him. He looked very different. He was very young, he looked like a little child, and now he's all grown up. They didn't recognize him, but they didn't change much, so he recognized them. But Rashi brings a deeper meaning. He recognized them when they were in his hand. He treated them like a brother treats brothers. But when he was in their hand, they did not recognize him. They did not treat him with brotherly love, as you would expect them to treat a brother. So, to understand how Joseph was able to attain such a level of forgiveness, how could he forgive the people who were so dear to him and did the biggest damage, so to speak, to his life, was selling him as a slave, completely letting go of him, and just making up a story that he's dead to his father. Not only was he not upset with them, he actually repaid them well. When they fell in his hand, he of course did first this whole scheme in order to bring them to the level of repenting. But after that, following that, he managed to be with them, and the relationship was flourishing and great. And what most of all is not only to discuss Joseph, because that was many, many, many years ago, but of course what it reflects to us. When we are upset with people, when people hurt us, when people say negative things to us, what are we supposed to relate? How are we supposed to relate to that person? Are we supposed to be staying hurt, or to find a way to reconcile and move on? So we were reading last week Parsha Vayigash, and Parsha Vayigash describes the whole scheme, the last part of the scheme where they finally Judah approaches Joseph and retells the whole story, the whole rundown of what had happened, and Joseph can't hold himself and says who he is. And this is when the interpreters are trying to understand what really happened. What made Joseph realize the time has come to say the famous statement, I am Joseph, is my father still alive? What triggered that statement? What was the point of history that made him change? So we find several opinions. What made Joseph uncover himself in Judah's speech? So Midrash Tanchuma brings one direction. He says like this: when Judah became angry, the hairs of his chest would pierce through his clothes and force their way out. Upon seeing that, Joseph feared the whole Egypt might be destroyed. Thus he confessed to his brothers, I am Joseph. His wisdom was to refrain from war, since he saw 10 heroes, each being able to destroy 10 countries. The Midrash goes out and says very interesting descriptions over the might and the strength of the brothers. Judah had one hair on his chest, and when he was upset, the hair would pierce his clothes. You imagine, he was very mighty and hero. And Joseph realized it's now or never. I have to stop with this game and tell them who I am before the whole country is turning to a big mess. We got the 10 most powerful people and are threatening the well-being of the country, and probably the first person they would kill would be Joseph, not knowing that it's their brothers, of course. So according to the Midrash, Joseph realized now is the time, or else it will be too late to do that. That's one way of understanding that. But what we've explained over the course of the past few weeks is that it wasn't that made Joseph tell them when he is Joseph. It was because Joseph realized the story is over, because there is no more. The point was proven, right? We're saying about 3 levels of repentance. It is the refraining from sinning. It is the resolution to resolve not to sin again. And the third phase is when the same scenario takes place and the person chooses the right way instead of choosing the wrong way. So Joseph putting together that plot of risking Benjamin, and they were the ones to choose to to stay with Benjamin, and that's why Joseph realized there's no more room for the game. Midrash Rabbah says all the words that you read that Judah spoke to Joseph until you reach the verse, now Joseph could not restrain himself, were consolations to Joseph and consolation to Benjamin. Consolation to Joseph, saying, see how Judah gives his life for the sake of the children of Rachel. Benjamin, right? Benjamin was the brother of Joseph, both from father and from mother. He was a child of Rachel. And consolation to Benjamin, saying, as I gave my life for your sake, so I will give my life for the sake of your brother Joseph if I find him. So, like we said, Joseph realized this is finally the stage where the story, the game is over. Judah had proved himself, along with all the other brothers, that they are not willing to give up a brother. So Joseph said, okay, that's it, point is proving. I can finally tell them who I am. They did one mistake 22 years ago. They've given up on a brother. They sold him as a slave and left. And now I brought this same situation where they could just leave Benjamin and go, but they're not willing to go. So obviously this is the right time. Joseph hugs them and kisses them, and they all are very excited and emotional. And then starts chapter 2. Chapter 2 is when he tells them, everybody, you go tell Jacob, my father, to come to Egypt. There's no more food around the world. It's only here. Little did he know, when Jacob reached Egypt, this was after 2 years of famine out of 7. But because of Jacob's entrance into Egypt, he gave a blessing and the famine stopped. So there was no 7 years of famine. It was just 2 years of famine instead of 7 because of Jacob. But he says, it's time for you to come. We all be like one big family. He settles them in the land of Goshen, and he sustains them and helps them through the end of their lives, through the end of his life as well. The Parsha adds, like we said earlier, that after the passing of Jacob, the brothers were afraid that Joseph, now all he cared was about the father, but now when the father is gone, finally he has time for retribution. And the reason they did so is because, I don't know if you remember, in the beginning of the weekly portion, it says that Jacob asked his son Joseph, he does not want to be buried in Egypt. He wants to be buried in Israel, in the land of Israel, in the city of Hebron, in the cave of patriarchs, right? Ma'arat HaMachpelah. And he says to his son, I want you to bury me next to my father, next to my grandfather. And of course, they fulfill that last wish. Everybody goes, one big procession from Egypt to Israel to bury Jacob. On their way back from the funeral and the burial, Joseph is telling the brothers, could you do me a favor? He says, would you be willing to pass next to the place where we were brothers, where you sold me into a slave, the pit that you throw me in? He says to the brothers, you remember, where was it? It was in Shechem, Nablus. We call it in English, Nablus. And they take him to the same scene, and Joseph looks down at the pit, and he says a special blessing, blessed he who had performed a miracle for me in this place, thanking God for rescuing him. He could have easily died in that pit, right? He was there, scorpions, snakes, and everything. So he goes to the pit, and of course it's closing a circle for him. This is after 22 plus 17, so 39 years since the day this happened. He finally gets back to the same place with the same people, and the brothers are thinking, when going back to Egypt, they're thinking, you know what? He didn't forget the story. Maybe he's planning on something, and that is why they come to him after the passing of the father and said, please, our father said, do not hurt us. And to that he responded, of course I will not hurt you. You're my brothers, and I will never. And he says to them, if the 10 of you tried to hurt me and you couldn't, right, because God had protected me, so I myself, just 1 against 10, of course, I would never even try, I would never attempt to hurt you. And in fact, this is what we said, the conclusion of the book of Genesis has really to finish up the story of rivalry between brothers. It all starts, the very first weekly portion, the portion of Genesis, the very first time when we talk about the 2 brothers, the brothers of Cain and Abel. They are not in great relationship, and we know exactly what happens. Cain gets up and kills his own brother, kills his only brother, he kills Abel. Obviously, that's quite dramatic and very drastic move, and of course criticized by God. And of course, Cain gets a very severe punishment for that. We move on to the next pair of brothers, of siblings. This is Isaac and Ishmael. So Isaac and Ishmael are very far from each other, although they have the same father. Their father is Abraham. But still, they don't kill each other, but they party. They say, we better choose each one our own path, and so be it. Isaac chooses to stay in the Holy Land, in the land of Israel. Ishmael settles somewhere else, and that is how peace is gained. You stay here, I'll stay there, and that's, if we don't meet, we can't fight, right? It takes 2 to tango. So that's
a story that Abraham once went to visit his son Ishmael.
Okay.
In particular, he had a say about who Ishmael should marry.
Right, that is described in the scripture over Abraham's. But between the relationship between the brothers,
Even that one was very distant.
Mm-hmm.
Was very distant.
Mm-hmm.
Even that one.
Even
a very influential, very distant.
So we move to the third pair of brothers. This is Jacob and Esau, the 2 sons of Isaac, which we know are conceived together. They grow up and they are in the same womb, right? They are conceived together. They're twins. They're, of course, not identical twins, neither in physicality and, of course, not in the spiritual sense, but they grew up together. And though they also choose each one their path, but they finally managed to meet. And we were talking about it, the special hug that Esau gave, a real sincere hug to Jacob, but Jacob feared that this hug would not remain too much, it would not stay longer, so he rather, for the safety of everyone, to keep separate. So that's a little bit of a progress. The first pair of brothers, one killed the other. The second pair of brothers, they decided to separate completely. The third pair of brothers, although separated, they managed to find a way to come together, even for a short period of time. And the last set of brothers, Joseph and his brothers, which started off in the same bad way like all the other stories, right? They had a big fight, they wanted to kill him, they tossed him in the pit, they sell him as a slave. You have all the elements of all the other predecessors, right? Everything checked. Fighting, hatred, animosity, yes, wanting to kill. You got it all checked, right? And here comes the big but. Joseph is able to supersede, to transcend everything that happened before him and say, this is going to be an ending to this travesty of fighting between brothers. And although he had all the conditions, the prerequisites to continue the fight, to continue the argument, he managed to find within himself strength to end it. Here and now, there will be no more hatred, no more animosity. We'll only be together with love, with peace, with unity, with tranquility, and I will help whoever I can help. Although they did not help me when I needed help, I would just disregard this whole story, and so we'll see how exactly he did that. Where exactly Joseph gathered those strength to reconcile and to bring everything that happened before him into an ending, and a happy ending, because the book of Genesis is ending this week, so it's a relatively happy ending, the way it's finished. And of course, we want to understand how he did that and how we could also emulate this thing. So it is worthy of mentioning that the Torah, the Halacha, Jewish law, tells us that we should look at Joseph and learn from him. According to the Jewish law, a person has to beg for forgiveness. If I did something wrong to someone, I need to go and ask for forgiveness. But there's a limit to that. I need to go ask once, twice, and 3 times. On the 3rd time, if I ask for forgiveness, and I need to ask it sincerely, not because I need your favor, so I just want it out of between us, and by the way, I'm sorry about what I told you the other day on the phone. Could you help me with this? No, that's not sincere. Sincere is not because I need you or because I want you. It is because I really mean it. So 1st, 2nd, 3. There's a limit. 3 times. 3 times I have to ask for forgiveness. If after the 3rd time there is no forgiveness, I'm absolved. That's it. I've already did my share of asking for forgiveness, and of course the other party is requested to forgive. Again, when sincerity is involved, when somebody comes seriously and with a sincere heart, then forgiveness should be attained. And even more so, we say every day in the prayer, before we retire, before we go to sleep, we say, I hereby forgive whoever made me upset. There was once a story with the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek, one of his Hasidim. He asked him to do something and he did not do that. So next time he met with him, he said, are you upset with me? You asked me to do something and I didn't do it. So the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek told him, I always, I say before I go to sleep, I say the prayer that I forgive. Here's what Shulchan Aruch says with regards to Yom Kippur does not atone for sins between a man and his fellow until he has appeased that person. For this reason, on the day before Yom Kippur, everyone should consciously appease every individual whom he has wronged. One who is asked to forgive should not be callous without forgiveness, and withhold forgiveness. On the contrary, he should forgive immediately. That is the commandment from Shulchan Aruch, and that's the story from here. That's what we say every day before we go to sleep. Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone who angered me, either physically or financially or spiritually, and so on and so forth. This appears in every prayer book you could open and see. And this is something that is required from us, something that we need to do. So how exactly we do that? We have some challenging days and we have some challenging figures we encounter, and it's not easy to forgive. It's not easy to ask for forgiveness, but it's even harder to forgive, specifically if it's someone that you know. Someone who you've just had one encounter and it was wrong. You know how they say in English, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Sometimes, right? Sometimes the first impression is very negative. It will be much easier to forgive the person because you say, okay, you probably had a bad day, you had a bad mood, you wasn't. But someone you are close with, someone you are involved with, someone you know very well, it's harder to forgive because you know the person. You know that they might do it again, and you know that you forgive once, you're going to have to forgive another time, and so on. How do you find the strength to forgive? In fact, forgiveness is inherited in the Jewish people. King David said, when he spotted the Givonim, the story with the Givonim, I'm sorry, I have to forgive. The Givonim had tried to become a part of the Jewish people. They used all kinds of means, and in fact, the Givonim held grudges. Givonim is the name of a nation, Givon, the name of Givon, it's a place, and they held grudges for King Saul, because King Saul was once in the city of Nov, and in the city of Nov he killed, seven people, 7 Givonim. So this is a whole nation upset at the king of Israel for killing 7 people, which he had reasons to do so. And it's been years and years and years ongoing from this story, but they're still full of anger, full of hatred. And King David says, these people, they can't really join our nation, because our nation is all about forgiving. It's all about being able to overcome the issues, being able to... So because King David saw how stubborn they were, holding grudges, he said, you guys, you can never fit in. You can never be like we are. You can never be really Jewish, because Jewish people have this quality that we're able to forgive. But of course, this is a beautiful story. When it comes down to action, How is it possible? How could we really find a way to forgive people who are making us upset, specifically if it's a pattern, if it happens more than once? And one of the reasons that's brought is when you are upset, you're only hurting yourself, not anyone else. When you forgive, you don't forgive someone else, you forgive yourself. In other words, if you want to have a better life, if you want to have a healthier life, you better start getting used to forgiveness. Because if you hold grudges, if you're upset, if every time you see that person you go to the other side of the street, you're making your life miserable, not this guy's life miserable, not the other party is going to suffer, you're the one who is going to suffer ever. They say a joke about a story about this guy who he was a truck driver, he had a concrete mixer, and he was having a hard time at work. And every time he used to drive with his truck next to the Mercedes-Benz agency, and he dreamed, he was dreaming, one day I'll sell my big truck and I'll buy myself a beautiful Mercedes-Benz. And, he was telling all his friends how he's going to retire soon and he's going to drop this hard work and finally buy the vehicle, the car of his dreams, a Mercedes S, 300, 500, 1000, whatever. I am not sure what models they had. And then one day he had a very tough day at work, and he comes back home, and he has a parking place for his truck, and instead of parking, he's coming with his truck. He's very tired, very agitated. He's very upset. And, all he wants is just to get home, take a shower, and go to sleep because it's been a really tough day. It's hot and it's humid. It's got a lot of work. And he goes in there and he sees on his parking spot a brand new car. And he says, this guy wants not only to annoy me, he wants to stab me, right? Instead of just let me park my car, let me park my truck. And he gets really upset at the new car that stands there, and he decides he's going to teach this guy a lesson for blocking his parking. So he turns around with his concrete mixer, and he picks up the thing, and he pours concrete on it, and he says, okay, that would teach him a lesson. As he goes up, he's so upset, he's furious, and he opens the door, it's quiet, and everybody says, surprise, it was his birthday, and his wife hands him the key to a new car, and he said, got you the new car you like, it's downstairs in your parking standing. So obviously, you understand, it was his car, just to annoy him, right? So, but it's a joke, but it really means a lot, because when we are upset, we are punishing ourselves. Being upset, being angry, is not hurting anyone but the person themselves, or even if it does affect other people, the effect is minor. The major effect is on oneself. And you could see that in life when somebody walks around being upset, they're ruining their own lives. They're damaging their health, they're damaging their mental health, and it causes a lot of trouble, a lot of stress. So to answer the question, how can we forgive? We better off forgive. If you want to have a happy life, a healthy life, if you want to have a peaceful life, we should learn how to control our mood, how to control our strength, and to say, I managed to forgive. And we have from the Talmud in Tractate Megillah, the disciples of Nechunya ben Akaneh asked him, in reward of what have you lived so long? He had a very long life, and he answered, I never honored myself by the disgrace of my neighbor, and I never went to bed with the curse of my neighbor, but reconciled myself to him before, and was liberal with my money. So there's a few opinions on what exactly that means. I won't get into it because it's a little off topic. But one of the things he said, how did you live so long? It's because I never went to bed upset. Even if things went bad, I found within myself the ability, either with talking to the other person or even without the other person, by myself, I managed to release, to let go, to transcend that, and to make peace with myself or with my neighbors. And then this is what made me prolong my life, have my days so long. In fact, a higher explanation with regards to forgiveness, not only do I benefit myself, I'm damaging myself when I'm upset, and I benefit myself when I forgive, it is also appreciated by God quite a great deal. And we have the story from the Talmud, right? Forgiveness, we say Amin. For heavens, we say to God, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. We said it today in the Avinu Malkeinu, for today was a fast day. And now we have no king but you. And he said, the virtue of forgiveness, this is what the Talmud brings from Ta'anit. It once happened that no rain descended. Rabbi Eliezer then recited 24 benedictions of prayer, but he was not answered. That was Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Akiva followed him at the reading there.
What's the set called D24?
The 24, yeah, there's a set. It's brought in Tractate Ta'anit. It's before that about different prayers that are recited. You know, when rain doesn't come, it starts with the sins. You have Monday, Thursday, Thursday, Wednesday. When the people fast, it goes from 5 to 7 to 13 fast. And on the last 3 or last 5, everyone comes out, and there's special prayers that are recited for the rain. So 24, the benedictions of the prayer, he was not answered. Rabbi Akiva, however, followed him at the reading this and said, Father and King, we have no other king but you. Only for your sake have mercy upon us. And his prayer was answered. Just all he said, not 24 prayers. Just said, we have no one but you. You have to help us. And it was answered. The people then began to murmur and said, Rabbi Akiva was a greater man than Rabbi Eliezer. Like everyone does that, right? Everybody starts murmuring. A heavenly voice went forth and said, not because Rabbi Akiva is greater than Rabbi Eliezer was his prayer answered, but because he always gives in to another. Rabbi Akiva had the virtue of forgiveness. Rabbi Eliezer was a wonderful, wonderful and great scholar, sage. Rabbi Akiva was more lenient and more easygoing. And when people would hurt him, he wouldn't get upset. He would give in a very beautiful way. And that is why his prayers were answered from above. So here we see another idea. It's not only that it pays off for our own health, it also pays off with regards to our relationship from God. But even though we just brought a few explanations why it's worthwhile and it's lucrative to forgive, these were not the motives of Joseph to forgive his brothers. It wasn't because he wanted to have a better life or because he wanted his prayers to be answered. In fact, Joseph looked at the story from a complete different perspective, and that helped him forgive his brothers. Let's look at what Joseph tells his brothers. Why don't you use the other stairs, going in and out with the doors? Okay, go. Okay, now close. Okay.
He says something sounds crazy, but it's not the argument of Job.
What is the argument of Job?
Which is Hashem knows better. Hashem has a plan.
Yes.
And common humans, even people part of prophecy like yourself, might not be able to know the whole of the plan, but must trust it. Is that argument? Yeah, that is an argument. That's what Joseph tells his brothers. That's what, after his brothers became very anxious that he finally reveals himself to them, he says like that, but now do not be sad and let it not trouble you that you sold me here. For I was to preserve life that God sent me before you. And God sent me before you to make for you a remnant in the land and to preserve it for you and for a great deliverance. And now you did not send me here but God. And he made me a father to Pharaoh, a lord over all his household and a ruler over the entire land of Egypt. So what happens here? Joseph doesn't only not need to struggle with himself for forgiveness, trying to find within himself, he doesn't understand what is there to forgive for. He's not upset with them because he says, just like Ruben was saying, this is a master plan of God. It's not about you and it's not about me. It's about God's will. I had to come down to Egypt. I had to be the king of Egypt to save you, to save my father, to save my family, to save the entire world from famine. And it all happened because Hashem needed me to do that and to be here. So it's not you sending me here, and it's not your fault, and it's not, don't be sad, because you didn't send me, God sent me here. Of course, they did what they had to do, they did what they did. Well, they didn't have to do it, they did it, but Joseph was not even looking at it. He was completely disregarding the whole animosity, hatred, throwing him to a pit, selling him as a slave. He doesn't look at it. He completely disregards it. He says, you know what happened? I had to be in Egypt for the dreams to be fulfilled, to be the king, everybody bowing down to me, not because he likes himself, but he understands this is a vision that has to take place. And he said to the brothers, don't be sad. Why shouldn't we be sad? Finally, Joseph says, this is me. 22 years I've been missing. Why shouldn't we be sad? He says, don't be sad because it's not you. It's God. God had sent me here. God had brought me. So what does Joseph's forgiveness really consist of? It's his belief in God. That really all this story had to happen. And
if you want to take it on to the next stage, the same applies in every negative scenario we have. And soon we'll see with King David, right, with Shimei, who brought this. Everything negative that has to happen, there's no room for getting upset because it has to happen. It had to happen. It's a part of God's plan. It's for the good. I can't see it. I'm not aware of it, but it has to happen. There's no room for it to get upset. Think of you as a computer. It just has to happen. Of course, it's very difficult to disconnect our emotion from anything that we come across with. But still, it is something that has to happen. And Joseph says, if you were just like a stick that was pushing me, could I get upset at the stick? Is it what, right? Even more so, he said, you benefited me more than anyone else because you brought me to that position of being the king of Egypt. It has to happen. So even though their intentions were not necessarily well, they were upset with him and they wanted to get rid of him. To say it clearly, they were not interested in his favor. They wanted to get rid of him. But he said, I don't care what you wanted or what you thought you're doing. You were doing me a big favor, right? And this is how the Rebbe defines it. He says the uniqueness of Joseph was that he looked at the outcome of the actions. Oh, save me some cookies. Rick says, on my way, save me some cookies. Okay. All yours. The uniqueness of Joseph was that he looked at the outcome of the actions rather than its intentions. Despite you intending evil against me, but God designed it for the good. Therefore, you should be rewarded, and I will sustain you. Not only am I not upset, you were the ones who brought me into royalty, into being a king of Egypt. I would have been stuck in Canaan with all you bunch of guys shepherding the flock and running away between the mountains, right? If it wasn't for you who sent me to Egypt, I would not be here. So instead of being upset, there's no room for upset. In fact, there's no need for forgiveness because nothing negative had happened the way he looked at it. He was such a special individual, and we soon see how we can learn from him, of Joseph. He didn't look at it as a situation where, I shouldn't be upset because it's damaging me if I get upset, or God is not happy when I'm upset. It's not good for the health. It's not good for my mental stability. He wasn't looking, there's no reason to get upset. He says, don't be sad. There's no reason. And that's obviously a very, very special and high level. So Joseph is really teaching us that even when somebody does something negative to you, you don't look at them as the person you're upset with. You say, this is a part of God's plan. This is a part of God's scheme. It has to happen. You miss a bus because you might have a different means of transport that's better, or you might meet a friend that you didn't meet for a long time, or you can find many, many reasons and many instances in life where you were upset at something, and within a very short period of time you realize there's no reason to get upset because you actually, and I'm not talking about people who didn't show up to work at 9/11, right? And there were some people who were very late on a meeting, and obviously there's many, many stories of people who kind of saved by something they felt negative, but they were spared. There was a righteous person named Rabbi Zusha Manipoli. Zusha Manipoli, one of the disciples of the Maggid of Mezrich, and Rabbi Zusha was a very righteous and holy person, but he appeared to be a very simple man. Everything he did was with simplicity. So Rav Zusha Manipoli had a special thing, a special custom, that every morning after he finishes his morning prayers, he used to look up to the skies and say, Father, Zusha is hungry. Zusha is his name, and he says, Father, Zusha is hungry. Now there was a person who was in charge of the synagogue. He wasn't particularly wealthy, but he always had something to eat. And that was like kind of a sign for him. When Zusha finishes his prayer and he looks up to the sky and says, Father, Zusha is hungry. This individual, listening to the conversation with Zusha and God, would intervene and say, hey, Zusha, you're a little hungry. I got something to eat. So this kind of became of a common practice. And after a little while, this fellow started thinking, he's talking Father Zusha. He might as well say my name. I'm the one who's giving him food all the time. So he decided he's going to teach him a lesson. He'll be there in synagogue. When Zusha finishes his prayer, he says, Father, he's not going to give him anything. He says, then he'll start appreciating it. What do you mean Father Zusha is hungry? Say my name, I'm the one bringing you food every day. So he says, and so he does. The next morning, finishes the prayer, and Zusha finishes his prayer, of course, after a while, because he was praying for many hours, lift up his eyes and says, Father, Zusha is hungry. And this individual sitting there and thinking, okay, let's see now what you're going to do, huh? Let's see now. As he was thinking, the door of the synagogue opens up, and a young boy walks in with a tray full of food. And he says to Rav Zusha, this is for you. This guy thought he was hallucinating, he was dreaming, right? And then, the boy gave the food to Rav Zusha, said, thank you very much, very lovely, thank you. And he walked away. As he walked away, this fellow ran after the child, says, what's going on? What did you do? How did you know to come today? And he said, yesterday Rav Zusha was passing by in the street, and I was playing with my friends. And it was a muddy season, there was rain and mud. And by mistake, we were playing, we were running, and we messed up all his garment. Everything got messed up with the mud. And of course, he wasn't upset. He said, it's okay, don't worry about it. But when I went back home, I told my parents, this is not nice. This righteous person was passing by, and I didn't notice. With my friends, we're playing, and everything got dirty. So my father said, why don't you, tomorrow morning, do something special, get a nice breakfast, and deliver it to the synagogue where the righteous person is always there. And that would be a nice way of you compensating for what you did. So it just happened, this guy was planning it in advance, and Hashem did it. So this guy realized, there's no more playing. He says, Father Zusha is hungry, he's going to get his food either this way or that way. So he might as well also be a part of that, because at least he's doing something positive with his time. So, so obviously, we see again, it's all from above. It comes from above. And God has His ways of doing things. If something has to happen, it will happen, whether we like it or not. So we're talking about something positive, but also things that appear to be negative, because in fact, everything is positive. It's just a question of when do we see it positive. Sometimes it's instantly, and sometimes it takes a while. So in fact, every time that a person is being hurt in a certain way, instead of looking at the person who hurt them, you should think, can a person hurt his fellow without being decreed from above, right? This obviously leads to a discussion. Is this something possible? Reuben, what do you think? You think it's possible to hurt someone without being decreed from above? We said everything is pre-planned. You think? What do you think?
It depends on everything's pre-planned, or so many things are pre-planned. The purpose of forgiveness of yourself, for that one suffice that these particles were pre-planned. You're pointing out, in fact, don't limit to that. Pre-planned is everything.
Everything is pre-planned. The answer to this question is no. Nobody can hurt you unless it was decreed from above. There's no reason to be worried. There's no reason to be afraid. If it was decreed from above, there's also ways that Hashem could change His decree. But nobody could do something to you unless it was decreed from above. And a person who is about to do something has a free choice, has a free will of whether to do it or not. If they'll do it, that's one thing. If they won't do it, somebody else will do it, both for the good and for the bad. If you'll give him food, you'll give him food. You think you're the one giving him food? You think it's not Hashem? Stand aside. The door will open, somebody would walk in just because yesterday he was passing in the mud and he got him dirty and he told his father and the father said, pray. This whole story happened and he kind of realized, but you don't want to do that? Don't worry. That's what Mordechai, we're just celebrating Hanukkah. The next big holiday is Purim. In the day of Purim, when we read the scroll of Esther, Mordechai, Marty, like you, Mordechai, huh? Mordechai says to Esther, she became the queen. And there was a big decree on the Jewish people. And Mordechai says to Esther, now is the time. You go to the king and you tell him, you have to talk to him, tell him you're Jewish, tell him that he has to cancel the decree. And she's of course quite reluctant. The king was known to have bad temper. He could have just ordered everybody killed in the same instant. So she says, so he says to her, if you will keep quiet, if you will keep silent, if you will not go, somebody else will do that. And you will miss out a chance. If Hashem decides to save the Jewish people, He will do so. You want to be a part of that? Be my guest. You rather ignore it will be delivered to someone else. Don't worry, Hashem makes no mistakes. It will be delivered, it will be done. This is what King David, we have two opinions to that discussion. We have King David and Shimi ben Gera, and we have Miriam, the children's nurse. And let's read the two stories of one King David and the other Miriam. Here's what we have from Samuel 2, chapter 16. And King David came to Bahurim, and behold, there came out a man from a family in the house of Shaul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera, coming forth and cursing. And Abishai the son of Tzuya said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I beg you, and remove his head. And the king said, what is between me and you, sons of Tzuya? Meaning to Abishai. So let him curse, because the Lord had surely set him to curse David. Who then shall have the right to say, why have you done so? King David is being cursed by an individual. And this was not a good time for King David. This is when he had to run away from Absalom, from his own son. And he says to him, if a person cursed me, it's because God told him to curse. On the other hand, let's look at a different story from Talmud Chagah. One of the most puzzling stories in the Talmud. Bibi ben Abaye was frequently visited by the angel of death. You know what is angel of death? Malach HaMavet. Once the latter said to his messenger, Rabbi Bibi was sitting, by the way, it's a different Bibi, it's not the Prime Minister of Israel, it's a different Bibi. He was sitting with the angel of death. The angel of death had his messenger, had his deputy, and he was sitting, and the angel of death tells to his messenger, go bring me Miriam, the women's hairdresser, meaning the time has come for Miriam to die, go bring and collect her soul. He went and brought him Miriam, the children's nurse. Different Miriam, okay? He said Miriam, and this guy, he probably new to the work, first day of job, first day at work, and he went and brought Miriam, the other one, Miriam the nurse, the children's nurse. He said to him, I told you to bring Miriam, the women's hairdresser. So he answered, if so, I will take her back. I said, I'm sorry. Okay, let's not get overexcited. I'm sorry, I killed the wrong person, but let me resurrect them. I'll get you the right person, right? This is the first day of job, the first day of work of his messenger. He said, I'm sorry, I killed her, but don't worry, we can fix it up. It's the angel of death. He's got, okay, I'll bring her back. I'll get you the other Miriam. So he said to him, since you have brought her, let her be added. In other words, if she's already dead, that's it, she's already dead. But how were you able to get her? He says to his messenger, angel of death, says to him, how did you manage to get her? It's not her time to die, right? You are supposed to get someone else. How did you manage to get her? So he answers, she was holding a shovel in her hand and was heating and racking the oven. She took it and put it on her foot and burnt herself. Thus her luck was impaired, and I brought her. You just walked in when angel of death gets a new messenger, a new helper, and the guy first day at work kills the wrong person. Okay, first day at work, angel of death.
This is like the mobster, they hire the dumb guy and they go, you idiot, you killed the wrong guy.
So, but this guy works for the angel, so he says, okay, sorry, let me bring her back to life. And he says, no, you killed her, you're not bringing. Why? He says, but how did you get her? It's not her day to die. The text is right behind you. The second one. How did you kill her? It says, because Hora, we say in Aramaic, Itra Mazalei, her luck was impaired. Her luck was impaired, meaning she had a bad day, or the bad luck. She had bad luck on that day. So the messenger of the angel of death managed to take her soul without actually being ready to die. So from this we see.
What? She gets to come back?
No, she doesn't get to come back. There's only one way. Angel of death doesn't give out free tickets. It's not returned. It's just one way.
Doesn't say you do it. Okay, bring her back to life. No chance.
So that's what I prefaced and said this is one of the more puzzling stories in the Talmud. This is one of the more puzzling ones because it makes very little sense to us. Murder is right. What is it going on? He killed the wrong person, and like, okay, so be it. So that means that there is apparently, right? There is.
Mike, it seems to me that she does not have something of freedom. The freedom of doing something so dangerous that they are killing herself.
She was right. She was at the state of, not the state of mind, but the state of being out of luck, so to speak, right? This is translated to modern day English, so I can't really grasp what the Talmud was saying, but this is just, just a way for us to relate to it. You have to go back to your class, maybe, or no?
No, I don't have, because it's the class, so...
So the teacher went, okay, it's good to have you. Okay, so the same story actually reflects with regards to Reuben. Not you, Reuben, the Reuben from the story. Remember how Reuben said to his brothers, let us not kill Joseph by hand, let us throw him into the pit. Now throwing him into the pit was not actually a great delight altogether. Don't worry, we're washing this, everything is washable. Don't worry about it. So Reuben said, let's not kill our brother, let's throw him into the pit. But you know what? The pit was not a 5-star Hilton hotel. It was a pit filled with snakes and scorpions. Okay, the pit.
It was more exciting than the Hilton Hotel.
Than the Hilton Hotel. Oh, maybe the Hilton in Vietnam. Maybe the Hilton Hotel in Saigon. They called it the Hilton. It was one of the infamous prisons. They used to call the American GIs. They used to call it Hilton. Anyway, they had a name for it. By the way, there is a Hilton in Saigon now, but it's not that. So I was just reading a book about the Vietnam War, so I know a bit about. Anyways, so Reuben is considered the hero of the day. He says, let's not kill him, let's throw him into the pit filled with snakes and scorpions. And then what? But you realize something goes on. He says, people, human beings, we can make mistakes that are, impossible to correct. We can kill the wrong person, so to speak. Snakes and scorpions have no free choice, no free will. They are always in the hand of God. So if Joseph does not deserve to die, which according to Reuben's view, that was the case. According to the others, the brothers, they do feel Joseph deserves to die. But he says, let's throw him into the den of the snakes and scorpions. If he deserves to die, they'll bite him. If he doesn't deserve to die, then Hashem will protect him. Exactly, that's exactly what happened, right? He was in the pit with snakes and scorpions, and they did not touch him. They didn't do anything with him. So, according to that, we can see that, in fact, Reuben was right, because he says, it's not our shot, it's not our call, it's God's call. If he deserves death, leave it to God. He'll take care of that. He has his ways of coming to account with people. So, indeed, we have, for instance, from all this, we find two methods, two systems. Is it really decreed from above that something wrong would happen? Would I really have a choice to stop it, to intervene, to stop it, to proactively do it? Or it makes no difference what I do because it's all predetermined. So, according to what the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, he says like this. This is from Igeret HaKodesh. Why don't you take the whole plate to you? Everybody's already finished.
Is it true?
Yeah, we all ate. We're all good. So he says, the Alter Rebbe says in Igeret HaKodesh, chapter 25, epistle 25, said our sages of blessed memory, whoever is enraged is as if he's worshipping idols. The reason is clear to those that have understanding, because at the time of his anger, faith was departed from him. For were he to believe that what happened to him is of the Lord's doing, he would not become angry at all. And though it is a person possessed of free choice cursing him or hitting him or causing damage to his money, and therefore guilty according to the laws of man and the laws of heaven for having chosen evil. In other words, the person could not say, I didn't do anything, it was God's will. I killed that person, but I just did God's will. No. If somebody is actively doing something wrong, they are liable both in the laws of Torah, in the laws of people, in the laws of God. Nevertheless, as regards to the person harmed, this was already decreed from heaven, and the omnipresent has many deputies. But in other words, if it wasn't this guy, it would have been another person, another time, another scenario. So getting upset at something that had happened, getting upset at someone that did something wrong to me, according to what the Alter Rebbe explains, is like worshipping idols, because that means that it's out of God's control. Well, it's not.
Like the story of Nero refusing to destroy Jerusalem.
Okay.
He refused, and that accounted good for his soul, but Jerusalem was destroyed nevertheless.
Exactly. It was his not wanting to partake in the travesty, in the disaster, but God's will had to be fulfilled. Why God has verdict in one way or another, we are very little or impossible for us to perceive and to grasp and to judge God why he chooses this way over that way. Again, like we've seen in life, sometimes after a little while and sometimes after a lot of time, we could finally understand why things happen the way they happen. But for the duration of the time that we live in, it's nearly impossible for us to completely grasp everything. Sometimes even individuals, in individual cases could find different reasons why things happen. So, just to close the story with Miriam, the lady that was killed by mistake, the Rebbe comments in the letter
Miriam the hairdresser?
Yeah, Miriam the hairdresser they killed Miriam the nurse. Then they went to get Miriam the hairdresser, which is supposed to die, but they killed Miriam the nurse. How did you know about Miriam the hairdresser? Yeah. So just to close the story of that, the Rebbe explains that she was in a state of risk, and when someone is in a state of risk, in a state of danger, then it is like, they're no longer immune from different things because they are in a state of danger, and then even small sins that are not making that person liable of a punishment could actually cause them get a punishment. But that's not natural. Those are not natural circumstances. In other words, if a person, for instance, completing on what we were saying last week, if a person deliberately puts himself into a situation where they're using all kinds of drugs or whatever, then they are bringing themselves into a state of risk. And then even smaller things, it's also explained, in medical theory, right? If someone who's not immune, they're not healthy now, even the smallest pneumonia could get that person completely out of this world, right? Even older people, or someone who's pregnant, or just went through a very tough surgery, they're very sensitive. So the same applies with spirituality. You better protect yourself. Don't get into a risk of being, unprotected. But that's just to close the story. It does leave question marks over killing the wrong person. But it does happen.
I cry so much for the job opportunities of the deputy angel of death.
Yeah. Always a bad day at work.
Honestly, I have recently had job difficulties and still not 100% of it, mostly out of it. I should be sensitive even about entities like that.
Yes. You should be happy that your job consists of researching the stars and not killing people. Because, like you said, the mobsters, they're actually the mobsters. The people who work for the mafia. They have a hard time.
Appreciate the job of the deputy of the angel.
Oh, they feel.
In the neighborhood I used to live in, a guy came in with his hair permed, and he was very richly dressed. He was this thin guy, and I told the coffee shop people that's their yakuza. The Japanese mafia, they perm their hair.
What do you mean? What's perm?
They make their hair curly on purpose.
Oh, really?
These guys who don't naturally have curly hair, the yakuza, the mobsters in Japan.
Yakuza, the Japanese mafia. Is here, you mean here in Taiwan or in Japan?
This dude looked like he was it.
Oh.
He was like dressed to the nines, as they say, and there was just a quality in that look, and it's like it's what I said after. Yakuza. He didn't look like it was like just.
But they don't operate here, do they? You don't know.
Does the mafia not operate in America, and they're from Sicily?
Okay, well they naturalized. They're already Americans, so it's a nation of immigrants. They brought the mafia as well. Was it FDR who said there's no such thing as organized crime in the United States? Or JFK who said that? There was a statement made in the 60s. No such thing as organized crime. This was the peak of the flourishing of organized crime.
This is sad to be some kind of tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, they said no such thing as organized crime in the United States.
There's gambling in this establishment.
Yeah, look it up. There's I think it was, I don't remember who it was. Anyway, okay, so This is what the Rebbe explains with regards to Joseph. In regards to the comment from Or HaChaim that a person of free choice could take away the life of someone who is not decreed to die from heaven, this should only apply in the place of danger, and it is indeed merely dependent on the heavenly decree, but this could be due to even a minor sin, since Satan accuses at the time of danger. Therefore, the risk is higher involving a person of free choice rather than animals, of which it is said, your fear and your dread shall be upon all the beasts of the earth and upon all the fowl of the heaven, even upon everything that creeps upon the ground and upon the fish of the sea, for they have been given unto your hands. Animals could not damage you unless they are commanded to do so. People could damage you unless they're commanded to do so. That's just to...
You're talking about animals would have like a defensive reaction but not malice?
Yes. Okay, I mean, listen. If you're looking for trouble, you'll find trouble. Okay, if you go swim with sharks, you and then somebody missing a leg, you could say, you could make better choices in life. But it's more of a comforting that explains the story of Reuben, how he tossed him to the pit, because he said the animals are not given free choice, and they're the messengers of God. From all the above, this is just a little side note that I wanted to cover because it looked very interesting when I got onto it. But from all the above, we're getting back to where we were about Joseph. We're talking about this class, how Joseph finds strength not only to forgive his brothers, but not to be upset with them, and not only not to pay them negative, but to pay them well against their negativity. When they wanted to kill him, and he did everything in his might for them to live. When they wanted him out, and he brought them into his life. When they didn't want to be when they want to be associated with him, and he brought them into his kingdom and sustained them and helped them. And we brought several reasons why it's better to forgive. You should have actually listened to that. It's better to forgive because it's more healthy. It's not healthy to go on holding grudges. It damages one's health.
I don't disagree with it.
I know you know.
To apply.
I know you know. Terms apply. Rick likes when terms apply. When you got a big free toaster, terms apply. Right? You saw that one? You saw that one. Free toaster, terms apply. I'll send you that video.
There's a whole bunch of that.
Free toaster
Buy this huge
with an asterisk.
We give you the cheap gift, so-called, because you spent thousands of dollars, so we give you the $2 gift.
Yeah, common sense. So it's not healthy to hold grudges. It's much healthier to forgive. It's better also in the eyes of God. We're talking about Rabbi Akiva's prayers were answered, whereas Rabbi Eliezer prayers were not answered. Why were they not answered? A heavenly voice came out and said, both rabbis are smart scholars, righteous people. Rabbi Akiva is more lenient and more forgiving and gives in easily, so that's why his prayers are answered. So we explained how lucrative it is to forgive and not to hold grudges, but Joseph was not motivated by that. Joseph had a complete different outlook. He looked at his brothers, even though they intended to harm him, he looked at him as the brothers were the catalyst to make him the king of Egypt. They had to send him to Egypt,
that's what riches.
Right.
It was a good deal for him.
So this is how the Tanya summarizes what we were talking about. And he says in chapter 12, so too, in matters affecting a person's relation with his neighbor, as soon as there rises from his heart or to his mind some animosity or hatred, God forbid, or jealousy or anger, or grudge and such like, he gives them no entrance into his mind and will. On the contrary, his mind exercises its authority and power over the spirit in his heart to do the very opposite and to conduct himself towards his neighbor with a quality of kindness and a display of abundant love to the extent of suffering from him to the extreme limits without becoming provoked into anger, God forbid, or to revenge in kind, God forbid, but rather to repay the offenders with favors as taught in the Zohar, that one should learn from the example of Joseph towards his brothers. Yes?
So the best I can do, honestly, with my situation is I'm very good and kind and forbearing with these people who I still have a grudge against, but it benefits the children to stay positive there. So I'm honest to say I still have resentments, but I judge and go.
If you haven't had resentment, something was wrong with you. That you're supposed to have it.
Yeah. You say in California, you must be high.
Yeah. Well, we've covered that last week after the class.
But the point is, it's like what benefits the kids there is to take the high road.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it's like, that doesn't mean I'm a saint. It means I'm making a certain choice going, yeah, I want to get away from these people. But while I'm there, I have to make the best of it because the kids are actually the central thing, as opposed to the bosses who think, no, it's the money.
Yeah.
So it's a high road.
Right. I agree. It's finding strength within yourself to really do that. We'll end with a story about a Jew that walks into the Baal Shem Tov, and he told the Baal Shem Tov that he was very wealthy, and then all of a sudden he made some wrong investments, wrong decisions, and now not only is he broke, he actually owes a lot of money. He's in great debt, from becoming super wealthy to becoming in great debt. And he came to Baal Shem Tov and he says to him, what am I going to do? How am I going to get back to where I was, and exactly why this happened to me? Now the Baal Shem Tov was always very keen on not telling the future, but rather making people understand that their choices in life is what leads them to where they were. So the Baal Shem Tov was trying to ask him about different exchanges, different interactions he had with someone, and this rich guy, or previously rich guy, remember that once he was sitting with his pals, with his friends, and they had, in those days they had, they still have those tobacco powder, to powder from...
Not snuff, chewing tobacco.
No, snuff, I think you snuff it, yeah. So he said he was sitting with his friends, he was just having a good time, and a beggar comes down to them, and he didn't ask for money, but he said, could I snuff a bit, could you... And this guy completely ignored him. He wasn't nasty or anything, but he just pretended like he didn't exist, or he just,
Typical among many people.
Yeah, he was just. And not only did he pretend he didn't exist, he actually shut the box. And the Baal Shem Tov said he helped him recollect that incident, and he said, "You shut the box of tobacco, so your fortune from heaven was also shut. Everything was stopped because of your arrogance, because of the way you mistreated an individual. All he wanted was a little bit of tobacco. You couldn't let him have it. You didn't have to be such a jerk." Basically, he didn't tell him that, but obviously that was the intention. So the individual says to the Baal Shem Tov, "So is it over? Am I hopeless? Do I have no hope?" And the Baal Shem Tov says, "In fact, there is a way for you to correct it. If you would go to the same person, try to find him, ask him for tobacco, and have him shut the box in front of you, and that will help bring things back to where they were and bring the balance." So he went out of the room of the Baal Shem Tov, and he realized the only chance he has is to find this individual, which he didn't know. And he went and searched, and was there a beggar at this time? And he finally found a person that might know. And in fact, it turned out to him that this beggar had become very, very rich, very wealthy. So he said, "That's great, because that helps with the scheme. He'll be rich and arrogant. I'll go ask for tobacco like a beggar, and we'll close out the deal." But unlucky for him, this beggar, or this beggar turned rich, not like there was a rich turned beggar, which is the hero of our story. There's a beggar turned rich. The beggar turned rich was a very, very nice person. He wasn't arrogant and he wasn't rude. And he decided, he said, "I'm going to go." I said, "Okay, so you made some research about the guy and you realized he's very healthy, very happy, and a very friendly individual." He said, "I'll ask him. For sure he'll give me." So what did he think? He said, "I'll go to when he's completely busy or when he's completely distracted, and then I'll ask him tobacco. For sure he won't have time for me, and then I'll call it a day." So he found out that he's going to marry his daughter, this beggar turned rich fellow.
Marry this guy's daughter?
No, he's going to marry his daughter, meaning there's a wedding in their family.
Marry her off.
Oh, marry her off. I'm sorry. Oh, I said marry. Yeah. Marry.
Stuff like that.
Oh, goodness. I'm sorry. Marry off his daughter, and he said, "Okay, I'll go in the midst of the wedding where everybody's busy and everybody's got something to do, and I'll come like a yutz, and I'll ask him for a little bit of tobacco. He won't give me, and we'll call it a day." So he goes in, and he finally, gets to him, and he says, "Can I have his tobacco?" And this guy turns to him with all his glamour, and he says, "Sure, and he, opens up his pocket and gets his tobacco box. And as he opens it, this guy faints, completely falls and faints. That's it. It's hopeless. The case is, there's no way I could make this guy arrogant like I was before. And I could. So after he faints, there's a big story. Everybody's coming. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And they wake him up, and he says, I got to talk to you. He says, what? He says, you remember a few years ago you came to me and you asked me. He says, oh, whatever, I was just a beggar. He says, listen, because of that, I lost all my fortune, and my only hope was to ask you for tobacco and for you not to give me. But instead of that, you wanted to give me, so the hope is completely gone. So this fellow starts thinking, and he says, wait a second. Because you had insulted me with the tobacco, so God paid me back by making me wealthy, right? That's what the Baal Shem Tov said. I was down, and from down, there's no way to go. I was so down, there's no down. The only way going is up. So in fact, he said, because you insulted me, and you hurt my feelings, and you brought me to the lowest of levels where there's no way to go but up. In fact, all the wealth I possess is because of you. So he says, all the wealth I have, it's because of you, because you brought me to that situation. If that is the case, I must help you, I must sustain you. Here's a loan, here's this, here's that. And he finally made it to, I have to bring you back to where you were. So, of course, it's an interesting discussion, it's an interesting topic, but what really matters the most is how we bring things into practicality. Like Rick was saying, there's obviously some resentment from finding ways to forgive. It is lucrative, it is worthwhile, but the most important is to have faith, because when you have faith, you be honest with yourself. You're having faith in God, and you're having faith in yourself as well, that you're capable of withstanding the challenge. Because someone who has challenges, and everyone has challenges, granted some have more challenges than others, or their challenges are more challenging, but I wouldn't say that statement, because everybody gets according to their capacity. You see, people are often looking at other people and saying, what they go through, I would never have gone through. And you would say, how do you know that? Because God doesn't put me in that situation. He knows I'm not capable of going through. So people go through different challenges and different ways of things are going on in their lives, some good and some better, I'd say. You want me to say bad? No, some good and some better. Some are only good. But still, going through challenges and having interactions with people and finding that the way to forgive is difficult, having faith in God really helps. Joseph, looking at the story, his brothers wanted to kill him. He doesn't look at them as potential murderers. He looks at them as, hey, because of you, I got to be the king of Egypt and save the whole world from famine. So, and he did it, not only say that, he thought so and he acted upon it. He actually literally related to his brothers as those who brought him to the position he was at. So that obviously helped him to reconcile with them, and that helped him to bring that forward, and we could all learn from Joseph about that. Any questions? Yes, there's more cake. What other questions?
I gotta leave one piece for Mandy. I realized he wanted more too.
Who, Marty?
Mandy, your son.
Oh, Mandy, my son. Oh,
He wanted more. I saw it.
Mandy's mother bakes those cakes, so
More goodies.
yeah, you don't worry. Don't worry about it whatsoever. Okay, let me close this.